Hello everyone and welcome to The Explainer. Okay, let's dive into this because today we're tackling a relationship dynamic that is, quite honestly, incredibly common, yet almost nobody talks about it openly. We're going to really unpack the psychological mechanics behind a partner's dismissive behavior, and specifically, we're zeroing in on the silent treatment and the sheer emotional toll of a one-sided marriage. If you've ever felt like you're literally talking to a brick wall in your own living room, well, this explainer is absolutely for you.
So I have to ask, have you given up on being heard in your own home? Man, it's a painful question, isn't it? Before we even get into the psychology of why this happens, we absolutely have to acknowledge the reality of living through it. There's this incredibly heavy, quiet frustration in enduring a partner who simply won't listen. It's a very specific kind of emotional fatigue. You aren't constantly screaming or arguing, you're just living in a void.
Part 1. The weight of unheard words. The quiet fatigue of a one-sided marriage.
We so often think of relationship problems as these big, explosive, dramatic events, right? But the reality of a one-sided marriage is actually much quieter. When you get used to not being heard, you let go of the weight of your own voice. And this doesn't just happen overnight. It's the daily accumulation of ignored conversations. Those tiny moments where your thoughts are just sort of brushed aside, that quietly chip away at the foundation of the marriage. When your everyday conversation isn't treated with care, you eventually just stop trying to share your inner world at all. You start to internalize this idea that your words just don't carry any weight.
And that leads us to a really profound and painful reality. Words are exchanged, but the hearts remain completely disconnected. Think about the strange, quiet discomfort of this whole dynamic. One person absorbs absolutely everything, the moods, the needs, the chores, the whole shebang, while the other person only talks about exactly what they want to talk about, exactly when they want to talk about it. It creates this profound sense of isolation when you realize, hey, we're communicating logistics like roommates, but we're entirely missing each other on an emotional level.
Part 2. Unmasking the silent treatment, the psychology behind the heavy air. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it completely flips our understanding of the behavior we just talked about.
To really get this, we need to unmask what the silent treatment actually is. At its core, it's emotional immaturity. It's the utter inability to process and communicate frustration, relying instead on a partner to just somehow guess what the problem is. It's super easy to view a partner's silent treatment as this intimidating weapon, right? Or like a sign of power and control. But we need to reframe this completely. Choosing to project a heavy, suffocating mood rather than just using your words to explain your feelings isn't powerful. It's actually a deeply immature coping mechanism. It's a complete failure to take responsibility for your own adult emotions. Honestly, they're essentially acting like a toddler who wants you to figure out why they're pouting.
So the absolutely crucial question here is, where does this sense of entitlement even come from? Well, often it stems from an ego trap, this childish idea that, hey, earning the money equals having all the power, and therefore my voice is the only one that matters. It's an incredibly immature value system. And what's even more ironic here is that a lot of the time, the partner wielding this excuse is bringing in a perfectly average income, yet they walk around acting like they're totally immune to basic relationship manners. We have to ground ourselves in the logical reality here. Financial contribution never, ever excuses childish, dismissive behavior. Earning a paycheck and treating your partner with basic human respect are two completely different things.
Let's walk through this, because it perfectly maps out just how absurd this dynamic really is. First, the partner brings outside stress, maybe from work or other relationships, into the safe space of the home, and they choose to vent it through this oppressive silence. Next, the wife takes on the burden, totally exhausting herself trying to read the room and desperately guess the reason for the tension. And then comes the sudden climax. The partner magically processes their own feelings internally and is suddenly cheerful in minutes. They act as if nothing ever happened, offering absolutely zero apologies. It completely ignores the massive emotional toll the wife just went through. It's an entirely self-contained and honestly selfish cycle.
Part 2. The trap of endurance. Why keeping the peace actually breaks the relationship.
And this brilliantly illustrates how we actually get stuck in this cycle. In a desperate effort to just keep the peace, we often inadvertently break the relationship. Look at how this endurance cycle works. Step 1. The partner acts out. Step 2. The wife silently endures it, maybe tiptoeing around the house, just trying to keep the peace and keep the household running smoothly. But look at step 3. Because the wife compensates so well, the partner faces absolutely zero negative consequences for their behavior. They haven't lost a thing. Which leads right into step 4. The toxic behavior is validated, and the cycle just repeats. By enduring it flawlessly, you're unintentionally sending them the signal that they literally never need to change.
Think about it. If bad behavior never costs them anything, they will never find a reason to apologize. If you're still out there preparing elaborate meals, flawlessly executing all the household duties, and constantly accommodating their silent, brooding moods, well, where's their motivation to reflect? People generally don't apologize if they don't feel like they've disrupted anything. As long as you absorb the shock, they simply don't feel the bump.
Part 4. Quiet acts of resistance. Shifting the power without all the shouting. Okay, so here's the good news. You actually have an immense amount of power to change this. And no, you don't need to have an exhausting, explosive argument to pull it off. You have a whole new toolkit of micro-actions. Stop over-accommodating their moods. If they're sulking, let them sulk alone. Reduce that nervous, people-pleasing chatter you do to try and fill up the heavy silence. Pull back on those elaborate, perfect meal preparations that you're just doing out of a sense of obligation. And most importantly, for sure, stop trying to guess why they're upset. You are simply taking the massive amount of energy you used to pour into managing their emotions, and you're redirecting it right back to yourself. It is a real game changer.
Because when words have failed time and time again, trying to explain why you're hurt just drains you even further. But always remember this. Attitude can communicate discomfort much more directly than exhausted words ever could. A quiet, deliberate withdrawal of your usual comforting behaviors speaks volumes. It literally changes the physical temperature of the house. It forces a major shift in the dynamic because suddenly the partner realizes that all those conveniences they took for granted, they're directly tied to how they treat you.
Part 5. Reclaiming your emotional independence, securing your future and your heart.
Which brings us to our final and perhaps most absolutely crucial concept. You have to dismantle the leverage your partner holds over you by reclaiming your emotional and practical independence. So often, the partner maintaining the silent treatment is banking on your dependence. They know, or at least they assume, that you're too scared of financial ruin to ever really push back. So what do? You start dismantling that leverage quietly. Slowly build your personal savings. Start researching new income strategies. Update your professional qualifications and skills. Actually, scratch that. You don't even have to take drastic action today or ever. But just knowing you have that safety net, it creates incredible mental breathing room. When you know you can stand on your own 2 feet, you stop accepting crumbs of respect.
I really want to leave you with this incredibly powerful takeaway from our source material today. Living together doesn't mean surrendering your heart. It's so true. You have the absolute right to protect your emotional core, regardless of your living situation. Sharing a roof or sharing a budget absolutely does not mean you are required to be a sponge for someone else's unmanaged, immature emotions.
So I turn it over to you with one final thought. What small choice will you make today to take back your power? Remember, you really don't need a grand, dramatic confrontation. Small, daily boundaries, like choosing not to guess their mood, or choosing to invest in your own skills, will quietly and permanently transform the air in your home. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you the clarity and the tools you need to move forward.